It was a normal afternoon in a small town. The sun was bright and people were going about their day. Cars moved slowly down the main street. A few people were standing outside the local grocery store, talking, laughing, and enjoying the weather. Then came a man. He was quiet, calm, dressed in simple clothes, jeans and a plain black hoodie. He walked slowly, hands in his pockets. He stopped near the corner of the store, stood still, and looked around. He didn't speak. He didn't bother anyone. He was just there. His name was Marcus. To most people, he looked like an ordinary black man, just another guy in the neighborhood. But Marcus wasn't ordinary, not at all. And soon, everyone would find out the truth. Across the street, a white police officer named Rick sat in his patrol car. He watched Marcus carefully, squinting his eyes. His partner was eating chips beside him, but Rick wasn't hungry. His face was tense, his mind full of assumptions. "There's something off about that guy," Rick said, staring. His partner glanced over. "He's just standing there, man." Rick shook his head. "No, look at him, hands in pockets, hoodie up. Probably waiting to rob the place." Before his partner could respond, Rick opened the car door and stepped out. His boots hit the pavement hard. People on the sidewalk noticed, their conversations slowly dying down. Rick walked straight toward Marcus. His voice was loud and sharp. "Hey, what are you doing here?" Marcus looked at him calmly. "I'm just waiting for someone." Rick stepped closer, eyes full of suspicion. "Waiting for who?" "My friend," Marcus replied softly. Rick narrowed his eyes. "Don't play smart. With me. I know your type." Marcus didn't answer. He just looked at him. People nearby stopped and stared. One lady even took out her phone and began recording quietly. Rick's voice rose. "Take your hands out of your pockets, now!" Marcus slowly took out his hands. "I'm not a threat," he said. Rick laughed coldly. "Yeah, right, that's what they all say." Then, without warning, Rick stepped forward and spat at Marcus. The spit landed on Marcus's cheek. The crowd gasped. Marcus didn't move. He didn't yell. He didn't swing back. He simply wiped his cheek with the back of his hand and looked at the officer with cold, tired eyes. "What gives you the right to do that?" he asked quietly. Rick smirked. "This is my town." "I do what?" "I want," one man in the crowd shouted. "Hey, that's not okay!" Rick turned toward the voice. "Mind your business," he barked. Then he turned back to Marcus. "Now leave before I arrest you." Marcus didn't move. He looked Rick in the eyes and asked, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Rick leaned in, mocking. "Oh, what are you going to do? Call your little friends? Please. You're just another nobody." Marcus didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his pocket slowly and pulled out a phone. His fingers moved quickly. A single text was sent. Rick scoffed. "Oh, so now you're texting for help?" Marcus looked up and said, "Help isn't coming. It's already here." Rick blinked. "What?" Marcus started walking away. Rick shouted, "Hey, I'm not done with you." But Marcus didn't stop. He walked down the street calmly as if nothing had happened, as if Rick didn't just insult him in front of everyone. Rick stood still for a moment, confused. Then he turned back toward the crowd. "Show's over, people. Go home." But people weren't moving. They were still recording, still watching. Rick didn't know it yet, but his world was about to change. Because the man he just spat on, he was no ordinary man. He wasn't some random stranger on the street. Marcus was someone powerful, someone respected, someone who had the authority to shake the entire police department to its core. And Rick had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Marcus walked slowly down the street, his heart calm but his mind sharp. The officer's spit still felt warm on his cheek. He didn't wipe it again. He let it stay there, like a reminder, not for him, but for the people who were watching. Behind him, Officer Rick was still yelling, still trying to control the crowd. But no one was listening anymore. Something felt different now. Marcus turned the corner and walked toward a quiet parking lot where a black SUV was waiting. The driver stepped out, nodded, and opened the back door for him. As Marcus got in, he pulled out his phone again and made one short call. "It's time," he said. "That's all? No names, no details, just 2 words." Back on the street, Rick finally got the crowd to move. He was angry. His jaw was tight. His hands were shaking. He stormed back to his patrol car and slammed the door. "Who did that guy think he was?" he barked. His partner looked uneasy now. "Maybe you went too far." Rick glared at him. "Are you serious? He was loitering. I did my job." His partner didn't answer. Just then, Rick's police radio beeped. "All units, report to City Hall for an urgent briefing." Rick looked at his partner. "What now?" He threw the car into gear and sped off. An hour later, the large conference room at City Hall was filled with officers, detectives, and senior staff. The chief stood near the front, looking nervous. Something was wrong, very wrong. Then the door opened. Everyone turned. In walked Marcus. But this time, he didn't look like a nobody. He wore a clean navy blue suit, a sharp tie. His posture strong, his eyes focused. Whispers filled the room. "Who is that? Isn't that the guy from earlier?" "He looks familiar." Officer Rick's jaw dropped. "No. No way," he muttered. Marcus stepped up to the front, and the chief turned to face the room. "Everyone, meet Mr. Marcus Reed, Special Investigator for the Department of Justice. He's here to oversee an internal review of our department." Gasps echoed across the room. Rick went pale. His throat felt dry. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply looked around the room and said, "Earlier today, I was assaulted by one of your own. I was called a nobody. I was spat on." Dead silence. Rick wanted to vanish. "I didn't reveal my identity," Marcus continued, "because I wanted to see how your officers behave when they think no one is watching. Turns out the whole town was watching." The chief looked furious, not at Marcus, but at his own team. "We will be investigating this immediately," he said. "There will be no tolerance for racism, abuse, or misconduct, no matter who you are." Marcus's eyes landed on Rick. Rick froze. He wanted to apologize, to run, to speak, but no words came. Marcus turned back to the chief and said, "This is not about revenge. This is about justice." He left the room. No drama, no big speech, just quiet power. But the message was clear. You never know who someone really is until it's too late. The room stayed quiet long after Marcus left. No one spoke. No one moved. Officer Rick sat frozen in his chair, feeling like the walls were closing in. His hands were sweating. His thoughts were racing. How could this happen? How could that man be from the Department of Justice? He had made a big mistake. And now, the whole department knew it. Later that day, Rick was called into the chief's office. "Close the door," the chief said without looking up. Rick did as he was told. He stood silently, heart pounding. "I reviewed the body cam footage," the chief said slowly. "You were aggressive. You escalated a harmless situation, and you disrespected a federal officer in front of witnesses." Rick tried to explain. "I didn't know who he was. He looked like a—" "Don't finish that." "Sentence," the chief snapped. "That's exactly the problem." The chief handed him a folder. Inside was a suspension notice. "Turn in your badge and gun, Rick," the chief said. "Effective immediately." Rick's face went pale. "Sir, please. I've been on the force for 12 years. "Then you should have known better," the chief said coldly. Rick stepped out of the office, stunned. Officers nearby avoided his eyes. Some looked disappointed. Others looked satisfied. Word had spread. Fast. Rick's career, everything he had worked for, was now slipping away. Meanwhile, Marcus sat quietly in his hotel room, watching the news. The story was everywhere. Local officer suspended after harassing DOJ investigator. Clips from the scene had gone viral. People in town were divided. Some supported Marcus, others tried to defend Rick. But one thing was certain: nobody could ignore what happened. Marcus took a deep breath. He didn't enjoy the spotlight. He hadn't wanted to be part of a public scandal, but this wasn't just about him. It was about all the people who couldn't fight back, who were mistreated and ignored. He picked up his phone and called the mayor. "Yes, sir," the mayor answered, quickly. "We've taken steps. We want to show the community we're serious." "I'm not here to destroy your department," Marcus said calmly. "But this isn't just about one officer. This is about culture, system, behavior." "You're right," the mayor said. "We need your help." Back at the station, Rick sat at his desk, now just a visitor. His locker was being emptied. His fellow officers barely looked at him. One rookie cop walked by and muttered, "Guess you picked the wrong man to mess with, huh?" Rick didn't answer. He just sat there, defeated. He had always thought his badge made him powerful, untouchable. But now the truth was clear. Respect isn't something you wear. It's something you earn. That evening, Marcus walked through the town again. This time, people greeted him with smiles. Some nodded. Others simply whispered, "Thank you." He didn't need praise. He just needed change, and the change had begun. But this was only the beginning. The next morning, Marcus woke up to hundreds of notifications on his phone. His name was trending on social media. News channels were still running the story. Some called him a hero. Others called him a troublemaker. One headline read, "DOJ officer exposes racist cop, justice served." Another one said, "Was the punishment too harsh? Citizens speak out." Marcus put the phone down and sighed. He knew this would happen. When you stand for truth, not everyone stands with you. He turned on the TV and saw something worse. A protest. A small group had gathered outside the police station holding signs that read, "Rick was just doing his job. Don't destroy good cops. Enough with the witch hunt." Rick had supporters, people who didn't see the whole story or didn't want to. Marcus rubbed his forehead. He had hoped the truth would bring peace. Instead, it brought division. At the police station, Officer Rick stood by the window looking out at the protest. A slight smirk appeared on his face. "They're here for me," he told a fellow officer. "Don't get too happy," the officer replied. "This doesn't change what you did." Rick frowned. "I was just trying to do my job." The officer shook his head. "No, you were trying to show power, and now that power's gone." But Rick had other ideas. Later that day, he went on a local talk show. Sitting across from the host, he tried to clean his image. "I've given everything to this town," he said. 12 years of service. I've saved lives. I've stopped crimes. And now, one misunderstanding is destroying my career." The host leaned in. "But people saw the video. You spat on a man." "I didn't know who he was," Rick argued. "He looked suspicious. That's all." The host's face changed. "Do you hear yourself? He looked suspicious. He was standing, quietly, not doing anything wrong." Rick paused. He had no good answer. Meanwhile, Marcus met with city officials again. They were nervous. "This is getting messy," the mayor said. "We're getting pressure from both sides. We need to calm things down." Marcus stayed calm. "Truth always makes people uncomfortable. That doesn't mean we stop." "But some are asking if you push this too far," a council member added. "What do you say to that?" Marcus stood up. "I say if standing against disrespect is pushing too far, then maybe the line needs to be moved." There was silence, then slow nods. They knew he was right, even if the truth was hard to hear. That evening, Marcus walked through a small park near the station. A young black boy ran up to him. "Are you the man from the video?" the boy asked. Shyly. Marcus smiled. Yes. My mom said you were brave, the boy said. She said you make people like me feel safer. Marcus knelt down. You should always feel safe, no matter where you are, no matter what you look like. The boy grinned and ran off. Marcus stood up, watching him go. That one moment reminded him why he started this. Not for fame, not for revenge, but for the ones who still believed in hope. Days passed. The noise around the incident only grew louder. Some called Marcus a hero. Others still called him a threat. But while the town argued, something else was happening quietly. Something that would change everything. An anonymous email landed in the inbox of the city's internal affairs department. Subject line, "You think Rick was bad. You haven't seen anything yet." Attached were photos, videos, and complaints. Complaints from other citizens, about other officers, about years of disrespect, false arrests, threats, and worse, all involving the same group of officers Rick worked with. The email ended with one line. Marcus exposed one. Now expose the rest. The investigation team immediately started. Digging. They had no choice, and what they found was shocking. Meanwhile, Marcus had kept quiet. He didn't do interviews anymore. He didn't speak at events. He watched from a distance, hoping something good would come out of the chaos. One morning, he received a phone call. It was the chief of internal affairs. "We thought this was about one man," the chief said, "but you opened the door to something much bigger." Marcus sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" the chief continued. "We found at least 7 officers in that department tied to misconduct. All of them had worked cases together, covered for each other." Marcus said nothing. He just listened. "We're launching a full review. This could change the department forever." Marcus felt something shift inside him. Not pride, not victory, just relief. Finally, the truth wasn't just being whispered. It was being acted on. Back in town, the protests began to change. People who had once shouted for Rick now stood quietly. Some even joined the other side, those calling for real justice. A woman stood holding a sign. "I believed the lie, but not anymore." Even officers who had stayed silent began to speak up. "I saw things," one of them admitted to the press. "I didn't say anything. I was scared. But Marcus gave us courage." One brave voice had started a ripple. Now it was becoming a wave. Rick, on the other hand, was losing control. Every day, a new story about him or his friends appeared in the news. His lawyer had stopped answering his calls. His family was receiving threats. His house was vandalized. He sat in silence, staring at his TV as the truth played out on the screen. This wasn't just about a mistake anymore. This was about a legacy, and his was falling apart. One night, Marcus was invited to speak at a community event. He stepped onto the stage, lights dimmed, crowd watching closely. He didn't speak loudly. He didn't shout. He just told the truth. "I didn't want to be in the spotlight. I just wanted to walk in peace, like anyone else." The crowd stayed silent, listening. "I'm not perfect, but I believe every person, no matter their uniform title or skin color, deserves respect." He paused. "And when that respect is broken, we don't stay quiet. We speak up. Even if our voice shakes." People stood and clapped. Some cried. That night, Marcus wasn't just a name in a headline. He became a symbol of courage, of truth, of change. And while the battle wasn't over, a turning point had been reached. The town would never be the same again. The news hit like a bomb. 7 officers suspended amid investigation. Racism and abuse allegations rocked department. It was everywhere. TV, newspapers, social media, even national channels picked up the story. People who once ignored Marcus now wanted interviews. Everyone wanted to know how one moment, one man, changed everything, but Marcus still stayed. Quiet. He had said what he needed to say. Now it was time for justice to speak. Rick sat alone in his apartment. He hadn't worn his uniform in weeks. His badge, once a symbol of pride, now felt like a curse. He watched the news in silence as the anchor read, "Internal Affairs confirms that body cam footage and whistleblower evidence proves misconduct dating back 5 years. Officer, Rick Thompson faces formal charges for racial abuse and obstruction." Rick's face went pale. It was real now. No more defending, no more hiding. He was going to court. At the department, officers walked on eggshells. Everyone was being watched. Cameras were installed. Every conversation felt heavy. Some officers were angry, others relieved. "It's about time," whispered one. "We let too much slide for too long." The new acting police chief made a public statement. "We don't protect bad officers. We protect the people. That starts now." Meanwhile, Marcus walked. Through the same neighborhood where the incident happened, people waved, some even apologized. "Sorry I didn't speak up," one woman said. Marcus nodded. It's never too late to stand on the right side. Then something surprising happened. A group of young boys ran up to him. They had notebooks and pens. "Can we have your autograph?" one asked. Marcus smiled. "I'm not a celebrity." "To us, you are," the boy replied. Marcus crouched down and signed each notebook. If nothing else, he had planted something in the next generation. Courage. In court, Rick stood before the judge. The same courthouse where he once laughed with power, now echoed with silence and shame. His lawyer tried to argue that Rick had been under pressure, that it was a misunderstanding. But the video didn't lie. The reports didn't lie. The truth was too loud to ignore. When the judge read the charges, Rick's face dropped. Suspension, fines, loss of pension, possible jail time, everything he thought was secure. Gone. He looked at Marcus, sitting in the back of the room. Their eyes met. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply stood up and walked out. Justice wasn't revenge. It was balance, and finally things were beginning to balance. Back home that evening, Marcus sat with his mother. She held his hand tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "I just did what was right," Marcus replied. She smiled. "That's what real men do." Weeks passed. The media storm faded. Rick was no longer in uniform. His name stopped trending. But the message Marcus left behind, that only grew stronger. One afternoon, Marcus received a letter. No return address, just one sentence inside. "I was one of them. I stayed silent. But because of you, I've decided to speak the truth." He didn't know who wrote it, but he knew what it meant. His courage was creating a ripple far beyond what he could see. The town slowly began to heal. People who used to cross the street when they saw Marcus now waved. Some even walked beside him. At community meetings, people spoke up. Black, white, old, young. "We want fairness. We want training. We want a police force that protects us all." And change started happening. Real change. One day, Marcus was asked to speak at a school. A class of teenagers had seen his video. Their teacher wanted them to hear from him in person. At first, Marcus wasn't sure. He didn't see himself as a speaker. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man who stood his ground. But he went anyway. The classroom was quiet when he entered. One student raised his hand and asked,